What happens when a talk show host decides to question the authenticity of a country music star who has somehow managed to become both a Nashville legend and a Hollywood fixture? What you're about to witness is one of the most explosive confrontations ever captured on daytime television. The moment when Joy Behar decided to attack Blake Shelton's marriages, his music, and his very identity as a country artist, and discovered that the laid-back Oklahoma cowboy had a side nobody had ever seen before. The View studio went dead silent. The famous, easygoing smile disappeared, and America watched as one of the most beloved entertainers in the country reminded everyone that you don't survive 2 decades in the music industry by being as simple as you seem. Before we dive into this incredible story, make sure to subscribe and drop your thoughts in the comments, because this confrontation will show you a Blake Shelton you've never seen before. The View studio carried an unusual energy that Thursday morning. Word had spread that Blake Shelton was the guest, and the audience was a mix of country music fans in cowboy boots and curious viewers who knew him primarily from The Voice. At 48 years old, Blake had achieved something rare in entertainment. He had become equally famous for his music and his television presence, a genuine crossover star in an era that increasingly demanded such versatility. A crossover that many Nashville purists viewed with suspicion, and that Joy Behar had clearly decided to question. When Blake Shelton walked onto the set, the applause was immediate and warm. His famous dimple smile was already at full wattage as he waved to the audience, his Oklahoma draw audible even in his body language. This was a man who had made a career out of being likable, approachable, the guy you wanted to have a beer with. But there was something else there, too, visible only to those who knew how to look. Behind the easy charm was a man who had navigated Nashville politics, survived a very public divorce, weathered tabloid storms, and emerged as one of the most successful artists of his generation. Blake Shelton might play the simple country boy, but nobody got where he was by actually being simple. Whoopi welcomed him with a genuine smile. Sarah Haynes was visibly excited. Even Sunny Halston seemed disarmed by his affable presence. Joy Behar, however, sat in her chair with that familiar expression, the one that suggested she had plans that went beyond friendly conversation. "Blake Shelton, welcome to The View," Whoopi began. "We're so happy to have you here. Congratulations on everything, the music, the voice, the beautiful family you've built with Gwen." "Thank you, Whoopi," Blake replied, his voice carrying that warm and distinctive Oklahoma rumble. "I appreciate that. I'm living the dream, honestly. Every day I wake up and can't believe this is my life." Then Joy leaned forward, and the atmosphere shifted immediately. "So Blake, let's talk about something real," Joy said, her voice carrying an edge that made the other hosts exchange glances. "You've become this huge crossover star. The Voice, Hollywood events, married to a pop star. But some people in country music say you've lost your authenticity, that you've traded your roots for ratings. How do you respond to the criticism that Blake Shelton has become more Hollywood than Nashville?" The question was clearly designed to put Blake on the defensive. His smile flickered for just a moment before resetting. "Well, Joy, I still live in Oklahoma. I still have my ranch. I still make country music. I'm not sure how doing a television show makes me less country. Last time I checked, plenty of country artists have done TV." He shifted in his chair, his relaxed demeanor now carrying an edge. "And let's talk about The Voice for a second, since that seems to be the part of your concern. I've been on that show for over 20 seasons. I've mentored hundreds of young artists, helped launch careers, given people a platform who might never have had one otherwise. Is that somehow anti-country? Is helping the next generation of musicians a betrayal of my roots?" "But it's not just the TV, is it?" Joy pressed. "It's the whole package, the celebrity marriage, the tabloid coverage, the fact that you seem more comfortable on a red carpet than at the Grand Ole Opry. Some would say you've abandoned everything that made you who you are." Blake's jaw tightened slightly, but his voice remained controlled. "I play the Opry every chance I get. I've had 28 #1 songs on country radio. I've been making country music for over 20 years. One TV show doesn't erase all of that. Let's talk about your personal life." Then, Joy continued, clearly warming to her attack. "You left Miranda Lambert, one of the biggest female stars in country music, and almost immediately started dating Gwen Stefani, a woman from a completely different world. Some people found the timing suspicious, like maybe the relationship started before the divorce was final." The accusation hung heavy in the suddenly quiet studio. The audience shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the light-hearted interview about music and marriage they had expected. "I'm not going to discuss the timeline of my personal relationships on television," Blake said, his voice dropping to something quieter but harder. "My divorce from Miranda was painful for both of us. We were together for a long time. We made beautiful music together, and when it ended, it broke my heart. But that's between me and her. What happened after that is between me and Gwen. I won't let anyone cheapen it by turning it into gossip." He looked directly at Joy. "Miranda and I both moved on. We both found happiness. That's what adults do. They heal. They grow. They keep living. And anyone who wants to reduce a decade of my life to tabloid timelines doesn't deserve an explanation. But it's already gossip." Joy replied with a dismissive wave. "It's been gossip for years, and you've benefited from it, haven't you? The whole Blake and Gwen romance has been great for ratings, great for publicity. Some might say you've turned your love life into a brand." Blake was quiet for a moment, and when he spoke, there was a different quality to his voice. The easygoing charm was still there, but underneath it was something that sounded almost dangerous. "Joy, I'm going to say this once, and I want you to hear me clearly. My relationship with my wife is not a brand. It's not a publicity stunt. It's not a ratings grab. I fell in love with someone during one of the hardest times of my life, and she helped me become a better person. That's real. That's sacred to me. And I won't have it reduced to tabloid speculation by someone who doesn't know the first thing about what we've been through." The counter was sharp enough to make Joy pause, but she recovered quickly. "I'm just asking the questions people want answered. You're a public figure. Your relationship has been very public. Don't people have a right to question the narrative you've presented?" "What narrative?" Blake's voice was rising now. "The narrative that I got divorced, met someone who understood what I was going through because she was going through it too, and we fell in love. That's not a narrative, Joy. That's life. Sometimes messy, sometimes painful. Sometimes beautiful things come from difficult circumstances. That's not unique to celebrities. That's human." He stood up, and the movement seemed to surprise everyone, including himself. "You know what I find interesting about this conversation? You've spent the last 5 minutes questioning my authenticity as a country artist and the legitimacy of my marriage. But what do you actually know about either one? Have you ever been to Oklahoma? Have you ever spent time on a ranch? Have you ever been through a divorce that played out in front of millions of people?" Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Blake wasn't finished. "I grew up in Ada, Oklahoma, population 15,000. My daddy worked at a car dealership. I learned to hunt and fish before I could read properly. I've been singing country music since I was 15 years old in bars where nobody cared who you were as long as you could carry a tune." His voice was getting stronger, more passionate. "And then I worked my way up through Nashville the hard way. Years of struggling, years of being told I wasn't good enough, years of wondering if I'd ever get a break. I got my first #1 when I was 25 years old, and I've been grinding ever since. That's not Hollywood, Joy. That's country music." He paused, collecting himself. "You know how many times I was rejected before I got my record deal? You know how many times I drove to Nashville from Oklahoma with a guitar in my truck, played for some executive who couldn't care less, and drove back home wondering if I should just give up? Dozens, maybe hundreds. But I kept going because music is in my blood. It's who I am." His voice grew stronger. "I've won the CMA Male Vocalist of the Year 5 times. 5 times. Joy. I've had songs that people played at their weddings, at funerals, during the best and worst moments of their lives. God Gave Me You wasn't written to be a Hollywood moment. It was written because I believe in love, in second chances, in the possibility that the best is yet to come. That's country music. That's what I do." He looked around the studio as if seeing it for the first time. "You want to question my authenticity? Come to Oklahoma. I'll show you the land my family has worked for generations. I'll introduce you to the people I grew up with who knew me when I was just another kid with a guitar and a dream. I'll show you what country really means, because it's not about living in Nashville or wearing a cowboy hat. It's about where you come from and who you are when nobody's watching." Joy tried to regain control of the interview. "I think you're being overly defensive. I'm just pointing out that your image has changed significantly since you became famous." "My image has changed because my life has changed." Blake fired back. "I've gotten older. I've been through a divorce. I've fallen in love again. I've become a stepfather to 3 amazing kids. Of course, I'm different than I was 20 years ago. That's called growth. That's called living. And I won't apologize for any of it." He paused, his voice softening slightly. "You want to talk about something real? Let's talk about being a stepfather. I never had kids of my own. And then suddenly I'm helping raise 3 of them. Kingston, Zuma, Apollo. They've changed my life in ways I never could have imagined. Teaching them to fish, to hunt, to appreciate the simple things, watching them grow up, being there for the moments that matter. His eyes glistened slightly. That's not a brand, Joy. That's not a publicity strategy. That's a man who was given a second chance at family and is trying every single day to deserve it. And if you think that's something to question or mock, then I feel sorry for you because you clearly don't understand what really matters in life. He turned to look at the audience directly. I want to say something to everyone watching who has ever been through a divorce, who has ever wondered if they could love again, who has ever felt like their best days were behind them. It gets better. It really does. I found happiness when I thought it was impossible, and no amount of tabloid gossip or talk show speculation can take that away from me. His voice cracked slightly with emotion. When I met Gwen, I was broken. I'm not ashamed to admit that. My marriage had ended. My career felt like it was going in circles, and I didn't know who I was anymore. She saw me at my worst and loved me anyway. She helped me find myself again, and now we have this beautiful family, this beautiful life, and I wake up every single day grateful for second chances. He paused, and his voice dropped to something more personal. Do you know what it's like to go through a divorce when you're famous? When every detail of your pain becomes entertainment for other people? When you can't even grieve in private because there are cameras everywhere and everyone has an opinion? It's hell, pure hell. And Gwen understood that because she was going through the same thing. He looked out at the audience, making eye contact with people who were visibly moved. We didn't plan to fall in love. Neither of us was looking for it, but sometimes life puts people in your path exactly when you need them. We helped each other heal. We learned to trust again. And then we built something beautiful from the wreckage of what came before. If that's not authentic, I don't know what is. He turned back to Joy, and there was something almost pitying in his expression. You want to reduce that to gossip, to question whether it's real. Go ahead. But you're not hurting me. You're just showing everyone what kind of person you are. Someone who would rather tear down something beautiful than admit that maybe, just maybe, good things can come from hard times. Joy's face had re-ended. I'm not trying to tear anything down. I'm asking legitimate questions about your public persona. No, you're not, Blake said quietly. Legitimate questions would be about my music, my career, what I've learned from 20 years in this business. What you're doing is fishing for controversy, trying to get me to say something about Miranda that you can turn into a headline. Trying to make me defensive about Gwen so you can clip it and put it online. He shook his head slowly. I've been doing interviews for over 2 decades. I know the difference between a conversation and an ambush. This is an ambush and I'm not playing. Whoopi tried to intervene. Blake, I think we all appreciate your honesty here, and maybe we can redirect to talking about your new music. I'd love to talk about my music, Whoopi, Blake said. But first, I need to finish this because what happened here today isn't just about me. It's about how we treat people in the public eye. How we assume we have the right to dissect their relationships, question their authenticity, judge their choices. And I'm tired of it. He looked at Joy one final time. I'm a country singer from Oklahoma. I've had a blessed career. 2 marriages that taught me different things about myself and a family I love more than anything. That's who I am. Not the tabloid version, not the talk show version, the real me standing right here, refusing to be reduced to sound bites and speculation. He began walking toward the edge of the set. Wait, Joy called out. We're not done. Blake stopped and turned back with an expression that mixed weariness and resolve. Yeah, we are. We were done the moment you decided this was going to be about gossip instead of music, about tearing down instead of understanding. I came here to promote some new songs and talk about the next season of The Voice. Instead, I've had to defend my entire life to someone who decided before I walked in that I wasn't authentic enough. He addressed the audience one final time. To everyone watching who has ever felt like they had to justify their choices to people who don't understand them, you don't. You know your truth. You know what you've been through and who you've become because of it. Don't let anyone make you feel like you have to apologize for finding happiness or for changing or for living a life that doesn't fit someone else's idea of what you should be. He smiled, and for a moment, the old charming Blake was back. The one who had won over millions of fans with his humor and his humility. I'll be at the Grand Ole Opry next month. Come see me if you want to know what real country looks like. I'll save y'all a seat. And with that, Blake Shelton walked off the set of The View, leaving behind a studio that seemed to vibrate with the aftermath of what had just occurred. The audience sat in stunned silence, many of them processing the unexpected depth they had just witnessed from a man they thought they knew. Whoopi looked thoughtful. Sarah seemed moved, and Joy Behar sat at the table looking like someone who had expected to be in control and had found herself completely outmaneuvered. What had started as a routine promotional appearance had become something far more significant, a meditation on authenticity, second chances, and the courage to be vulnerable in public. Blake Shelton had walked into the studio as a charming entertainer and had walked out as something more. A man who refused to let his life be reduced to tabloid narrative, who defended his love story against cynicism, who reminded everyone that country music wasn't about geography, but about honesty. And perhaps most importantly, he had shown that the easygoing smile and the good old boy persona weren't the whole story. Underneath that charm was a man of depth and conviction. Someone who had experienced real pain and real joy and wasn't going to let either be cheapened by someone who didn't understand them. That was the Blake Shelton that most people never got to see. And on that day in that studio, America finally met him. The aftermath of that interview would dominate entertainment news for days. Country music fans rallied around Blake with a ferocity that surprised even longtime observers. His next single would debut at #1. And somewhere in Oklahoma on a ranch that most people would never see, a man who had started with nothing would continue living the life he had built, one authentic day at a time. That was the real Blake Shelton, not the voice coach, not the celebrity husband, not the crossover star, just a kid from old who never forgot where he came from, no matter how far he traveled. And on that day, he had reminded everyone exactly who that kid had become. For those who had sung along to his hits on country radio, who had watched him mentor young artists on The Voice with patience and humor, who had cheered when he found love again after heartbreak, there was something deeply satisfying about watching him refuse to be diminished. He had never pretended to be anything other than what he was, a country boy with a good voice who got lucky and worked hard and never stopped being grateful for the life he'd been given. That was the real lesson of that morning. Not about celebrity or authenticity or the boundaries between Nashville and Hollywood, but about the simple power of knowing who you are and refusing to let anyone else define you. Blake Shelton had learned that lesson growing up in Oklahoma, and he had demonstrated it once again with grace and fire in a television studio in New York City. What do you think about this incredible confrontation? Was Joy Behar out of line, or was she just doing her job? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And make sure to subscribe for more stories that will absolutely leave you speechless.